Hi, it's Steph. Welcome back to my garden. I've officially hit the part of the gardening season that I like to refer to as the summer slump. Now, the summer slump hits me each year around the month of July. When the temperatures go up, my motivation to be out in the garden comes down. But what I do to combat that is to try to come out during the times of day where it is most pleasant. And for me, that is in the early hours of the morning when it is still nice and cool, or in the evening after dinner before the sun goes down. You can hear the birds, it is nice and comfortable, and I love being in the garden during those times. But even in the summer, our gardens need us and they require a little bit of maintenance. For me, that mostly looks like spraying some deer and rabbit repellent, making sure that things are watered, keeping up with some weeding, as well as deadheading my plants so that they will continue to produce blooms for me for the rest of the season. So today I am going to go ahead and get some of those garden maintenance chores done. And I thought that I would share that with you in case you're also hitting a little bit of a summer slump in the garden, and this could possibly serve as a little bit of motivation and inspiration.
Over the last week, we've continued to work on spreading mulch in the garden, and I'm happy to report that even though we had a huge pile, we've put quite a dent in it and we're almost done, and it just makes the garden look so nice and tidy. But before I started laying down mulch in my front borders, I did go ahead and deadhead all of my salvia. Now the salvia and the nepeta start blooming somewhere in mid to late May, so at this point they're pretty tired and they need to be cleaned up. So I went through and I deadheaded all of them, and this morning I was doing the nepeta. And after I cleaned up the plant, I went ahead and applied some plant tone, which is an all-purpose granular fertilizer, to give my plants a little boost for their next set of blooms. Now this bucket that you saw here with some granular fertilizer, it's actually plant tone, but I put it in this small bucket because the 25-pound bag is too heavy to carry around from plant to plant. Here you can see my Sahara rudbeckia that I started from seed in the basement under grow lights last winter, and it's starting to bloom and looking so pretty. My front porch planters were also in need of a little attention. I had to clean up and do a little bit of deadheading. Here you see I have some lantana with some annual vinca, and even the perennials that I planted in these planters in the spring are still putting out blooms. This is the dianthus that I'm working on deadheading, and I also have some butterfly blue scabiosa that keeps putting out some more blooms, so that's always exciting. And those are perennials, so I can plant them out in the garden when they are done being used in these planters. So most of these planters are made up of either perennials, plants that were started from seed, or just a couple of annuals that I purchased, as well as some overwintered mandevilla. When I was done deadheading, it was time to fertilize, and I usually remember to fertilize by using the term Fertilizer Friday, and here I'm using some of my Alaska Moorbloom, which is my favorite. You just mix it in with some water in your watering can, and I find that my plants bloom really well with it. Check out my penstemon. So I also deadheaded my penstemon, and I kept these long pieces or these long stems because they dry up and look really pretty and cut flower arrangements. So I'm going to experiment with that this season. If you've been around the channel since last season, you might recall that I had grown a really pretty short stature zinnia called the Double Sahara Raspberry Ripple. This zinnia is great for the front of a border or even a container. It only gets to be about 12 to 20 inches in height and in width. Hardly needed any deadheading, and has beautiful shades of like a fuchsia pink, a light pink, and a white, almost a striping effect. Well, this year, instead of planting it in the border that I had it last year, I planted it in a different spot here by the driveway walls that we have, and I think they're going to look really great here. So I'm just giving them a feed with some of my Alaska Bloom fertilizer to really get them growing and filling out. But so far, they are looking great. While it's not necessary to deadhead knockout roses, I do like to go through and deadhead mine because they're right on my front walkway, so I like to clean them up. And in June, we had our big bloom with the knockout roses, and they looked stunning. When you looked at the shrub, all you saw was pink, which is great because the leaves looked terrible. I had a sawtooth larva infestation and the leaves got pretty skeletonized. So at this point you can see that the infestation has settled down and the shrub is pushing out some new growth. You can actually see the red leaves on the left hand side here. And so in a few weeks, the shrub will start pushing out new buds, new foliage, and they'll look good as new and produce roses for me until our first hard frost in late October. You might recall in April when we did an overhaul of our raised bed garden, converting everything from rotted wood beds to these Vego metal raised beds. Well, the modular kits come with several panels, and it turns out that we had some extra panels left over from our garden overhaul. So when I looked at the back of the box, we were able to figure out which configurations we were able to make with the pieces that we had left. So I ended up making a 5x2 bed because I had the perfect spot picked out to put it. Right here in this unused corner right in front of our raised bed garden. I wanted to have additional growing space, and since I had those extra panels, it worked out perfectly. And in order to fill up this bed, I ended up using some of the hugelkultur method. I believe that's how you say it, where you use basically some materials such as logs and leaves. You can even use grass clippings to fill the bed. And the point of this is that eventually all of this organic matter will break down and feed your soil. So it also takes up a lot of volume, which is great because then you don't have to purchase as much soil, which is always helpful. Once we got our logs layered and our leaf mold, I went ahead and filled the rest of this bed. Since it is a new bed with no soil in it, I went ahead and used the Coast of Maine raised bed mix. This is their castine blend, and it's a really nice, rich soil with a lot of organic matter. I've talked about this on the channel before, but I don't make my own compost. I don't have a compost pile, and am I even a real gardener if I don't have my own compost? I don't know, maybe that's up for debate, but the truth is I am terrified of rodents, and so I never wanted to have a compost pile for fear that it would attract rodents to my yard, which is partly the same reason why I never had a chicken coop, even though I would have loved to have chickens, because their feed can attract rodents. So the best alternative to my own compost was this Coast of Maine raised bed mix. I picked up 7 bags and I used all of them. Now this will settle over time as the logs and the leaves start to break down, but for this year I have enough soil in this bed to grow the plants that I'm going to plant in it.
It's the next day, and last night I was able to get the bed set up here in this area, as well as fill it with some soil. But then I started to run out of daylight, and I had to make a decision as to whether or not I wanted to plant up the bed or if I wanted to spray for deer and rabbit. And I had to spray. Because we had had rain the day before, I wanted to make sure to get that done so that the deer do not eat my plants. Because my hydrangeas are just starting to bud up, and my lilies, I have some beautiful Casablanca lilies, and they love the lily buds and they love the hydrangea buds. So I got that done. So this evening, I'm gonna go ahead and plant up this new bed. Now, I had gotten a few of these plants from a friend and a viewer. Maria, if you're watching this video, thank you so much for your friendship and for these plants that you shared with me. There are some bush impatiens, some cosmos. So I'm going to go ahead and add them to this bed, along with some additional zinnias that I started from seed and some more sunflowers. Well, I got all of the plant starts planted in here, and with the starts that Maria gave me, along with a few things that I started from seed, it filled the bed right up. And I forgot that Maria had also given me some cleome, which is already all budded up and getting ready to bloom soon. So I tucked one in each of the corners. Now, my plan for this bed is to grow garlic in it. Because garlic takes a really long time to grow, you plant it sometime in the fall here in my zone 6, so sometime around the beginning or mid-October. and it doesn't get lifted until about the beginning of July. Now, I just pulled my garlic out this week and the leaves had started to turn yellow, so apparently that is when you're supposed to pull garlic. It was only my second year growing it, and last year it was a flop. And this year, I would say that even though my cloves were small, I would say it was pretty successful. I was really happy with them. So this is going to be my designated garlic bed. So at some point in October, I will plant my garlic in here, and the following July, I will pull it. And once I pull the garlic, I will have some of these annual seeds started as small plants so that when the garlic comes out, the plants will go in. So I think that'll be a really great use for this bed. Now, I do have to set up irrigation in it, but luckily my spigot is right on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and water these in. In my last garden tour video, I had talked about how these coneflowers here, this is the white swan echinacea that I started from seed several years ago, has started to revert back to its original plant, which is the Echinacea purpurea. Here, this was all the same plant, and it was all started as a white swan coneflower. And you can see that now I am getting some of the purple coneflowers. And my guess is that each year I will get more and more purple and less white, which is a little disappointing. While I do like the purple, I really wanted to keep my coneflowers in my front border white. But if you've ever grown the white swan before, it's a possibility that this might happen. And if you already had this experience, go ahead and comment below. I thought it was really interesting. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I want to take a moment to wish you all a very happy 4th of July. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.